And good afternoon, producer Susan. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was great, Jersey Joe. How was yours?
Good, thanks. Quiet. Didn't for the first time in my life, I went out to dinner to a restaurant. I didn't instead of having home cooking, it was just my wife and I. So we just went out and
Apparently, that's a new trend.
just to go out to dinner and not cook. Yeah. Well, I'm not a big turkey fan either, so I had some wonderful roast duck. It was. I think I'm going to do that again next year. Anyway, actually, I should say just my wife and I. We went out with a friend. We had a friend was able to get us a reservation. Anyway, so today's the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Today is December 3rd. And for those who are watching the video, if you're wondering what that big brown spot in the middle of my forehead is, it's because I had some cryosurgery to remove something, as you get older from the sun, you get stuff growing on your head. So that's a little cryosurgery. So that's what's big brown spot in the middle of my head. Anyway, by the way, we had a discussion. I know you were an earth science major?
Yep.
We had a big discussion about the difference between meteorological winter and astrological winter. And turns out that meteorological winter started December 1st, which was, I believe, Saturday. But astronomical winter doesn't happen till December 21st, which is
Yep.
the winter solstice. So there's actually two beginnings of winter, depending if you want meteorological or astronomical. Anyway,
Well, I think most people prefer astrological because that's the day that the daylight starts getting longer again.
right, because at the solstice is when the shortest daylight of the year, and on December 22nd, each day gets a little bit longer. The amount of daylight each day gets longer. So
So
we're
two
coming
more
up
weeks
on
of darkness, and then light will start to happen once
right.
again.
All right. Well, you want to hear what we're going to try to squeeze in today?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
All right. Well, we all heard about the trial down in Georgia of the Venezuelan immigrant who murdered that nursing home student, Laken Riley.
Yes.
We're going to talk about how he got from New York City down to Georgia and who paid for his trip. Um, and uh, and a lot of people may be very, very surprised about how he was able to get from New York City to
I
Georgia.
was shocked.
I know you found out, and you found out something too about not just him, but illegal immigrants in general and their ability to
Yeah.
fly. And in a related story, we have a clip of a doctor. We all know who Dr. Phil is, right?
Yeah.
He's interviewing a former DHS official who is telling him how the government of Venezuela is sending all of their prisoners empty. They're emptying their prisons. They don't want to feed them. They can't afford to feed them, and they're basically saying, "We will set you free if you go to the United States." And he's confirming that not only is it happening, but the government of the United States knows about it. And here's one I got from producer Susan. In our Science Minute, this was new to me. We'll tell you how specially trained police dogs are being trained to detect even the tiniest electronic devices and components. And I was just stunned about that.
Mhm.
Um, we'll also speculate why President Biden pardoned his son Biden after stating multiple times that he wouldn't, and how that decision has left many liberal media pundits with eggs on their faces. Here's another one. Are you familiar with the German word Schadenfreude?
No.
It means Schadenfreude is taking joy in the misfortune. I ever see like somebody see these videos where somebody, steps off a dock and falls into the water or something, and you laugh. Well, that's taking joy at the misfortune of others. Well, we're going to give you an example of President why Kamala Harris's last official duties will be a perfect example of Schadenfreude. And our taxpayer relief shot this week comes to us from California, where a grandfather who is spending the night with his two grandsons shoots and kills an intruder. All right. So here's our quote of the week by economist Thomas Sowell, who, by the way, is a black man for those who don't know that. But, um, we've had another quote, I think, by economist Milton, the late Milton Friedman. He said, we judge too many programs by their intentions rather than their results. Well, here's Thomas Sowell again, who's a black man. He said, if you want to see the poor remain poor generation after generation, just keep the standards low in their schools and make excuses for their academic shortcomings and personal misbehavior. But please don't congratulate yourself on your compassion. And where have we seen this? Like in Chicago,
Yeah.
where almost half the people that graduate from high school can't read at an eighth grade level.
Yeah.
They just run them through. Doesn't matter how poorly you do, how bad your attendance is, we're going to graduate you and give you a diploma. And if you can't do simple math, if you don't know that 3/4 of an inch is equal to 0.75 inches, If you can't read instructions or operating on a forklift, what kind of job are you going to wind up being qualified for?
I mean, those are just basic everyday life skills.
Right. So again, so let me repeat that quote from Thomas Sowell. If you want to see the poor remain poor generation after generation, just keep the standards low in their schools and make excuses for their academic shortcomings and personal misbehavior, but please don't congratulate yourself on your compassion. And by the way, I believe a couple of months ago, 60 Minutes did a segment on a school, run by a black principal and basically where they took young black men, maybe it was Chicago, and it was basically high standards, almost like a military school, and also and black girls, and it was the classes are all segregated, and yeah, some of the kids they bounced them out. Okay, you don't want to comply, you don't want to, you're out of here. But for the maybe 10% they bounced out, the other 90% um, got the education they would never get in a normal public school. And the same thing, if you get a young black man goes in the Marines and he gets training and discipline, he comes out of the Marines, he's going to be very, very employable. So again, if you want to look for it, maybe I can find a link. If I can, I'll send it to producer Susan. But again, lowering standards doesn't help people in the long run. In the short run, yeah, they'll graduate and get a diploma, but if they can't read or write or do simple math, that diploma is not going to do them any good in their life, in their the life lessons. All right, so let's move on to Jose Ibarra, the Venezuela immigrant who was convicted in Georgia for murdering the nursing student Laken Riley. He attacked her and sexually assaulted her while she was out for her morning run. And one of the questions that was answered by the prosecution was how did Mr. Ibarra get from New York City, which is where he was originally sent by Immigration and Border Patrol? They put him on a bus and sent him to New York City. How did he get from New York City to Georgia? He had no car, no driver's license, no valid ID, and no money. Well, last week in the courtroom, or 2 weeks ago in the courtroom, on Monday during Ibarra's trial, prosecutors displayed a photo of a Delta Airlines ticket from New York City to Atlanta dated September 28th for Ibarra. Um, Now, so you may want to ask, well, first of all, who paid for the plane ticket? Well, um, here's who paid for the plane ticket. And this is a quote from the Link story. Ibarra's former roommate, Rosbelli Flores Bello, testified on Monday that she and Ibarra, both Venezuelan nationals who connected in Queens in New York, went to the Roosevelt Hotel in Manhattan in September of that year to request a, quote, humanitarian flight to Atlanta. Ibarra's brother promised they would find work in Athens, Georgia. The Roosevelt Hotel, which is located not far from New York's iconic Grand Central Station, was transferred into an immigration processing hub or reticketing center in May 23 by the city of New York. New York City official government website defines reticketing as a service provided to individuals who are new arrivals to the United States and are seeking asylum. Basically, what they're saying is New York City figured it was cheaper to ship these people somewhere else than to continue to feed them and house them in New York City. So New York, if you're an illegal immigrant in New York City and you want to go somewhere else, New York City will happily buy you a plane ticket or a train ticket to wherever you want to go and even give you some traveling money. Now, but it's a plane ticket. Well, how does a guy with no passport, no driver's license, no form of ID get on a plane? And I know I told you this, you were shocked. Under current rules, if you swim across the Rio Grande River and you get, caught by
Yep.
Customs and Border Patrol, they take you in, they photograph you, they fingerprint you, and then they print off what's called a notice to appear. It's a court date. They say you have a notice to appear before this immigration court on this date, and it typically dates 2, 3 years in the future. Well, the airlines have been told, TSA has been told to accept that notice to appear as proof of identity if they want to get on an airplane. So can you believe that?
Yeah. And taxpayer money.
Taxpayer. So the taxpayers paid for this murderer's flight from New York City to Atlanta, Georgia, and he was able to get on an airplane because he was given a notice to appear summons by Customs and Border Patrol. And that's how this murderer went from New York City to Atlanta, where 3 weeks later He grabbed this young nursing student on her morning run, assaulted her, raped her, and killed her with a rock. So that's how that happens. So thank you, New York City, and thank you, Customs and Border Patrol under current leadership. Um, now, so what is the background of these Venezuelan immigrants being flown to the? By the way, the U.S. has this program for Cuban, Haitian, and Venezuelan immigrants, where they actually put them on. I forget the name. It's something parole, where they actually will take them in and give them a work visa. Well, so they'll actually say, yes, you're welcome. We'll fly you in. What city do you want us to fly you into? Well, here's a former DHS official. I got to stop this over. And we all know who Dr. Phil is, right?
Yep.
Well, here's Dr.
Talk
Phil
show
talking
host,
to a former,
psychiatrist.
right. And he's talking to a former DHS official about this program where their U.S. is welcoming Haitian, Cuban, and Venezuela refugees. And here's the correlate.
Telling me that DHS has acknowledged that Venezuela, for example, is emptying their prisons and their rehabilitation centers with the understanding you get out if you leave here and go to the United States.
Yes.
And DHS has, in writing, said, we know that's happening. We know they're coming here. We're processing them in and have no idea where they are.
Correct.
And let me just tell you this gentleman's name. He's not anonymous. Okay. This gentleman's name is Victor Avila. He's a former Department of Homeland Security official. Let me play this for you one more
You're
time.
telling me that DHS has acknowledged that Venezuela, for example, is emptying their prisons and their rehabilitation centers with the understanding you get out if you leave here and go to the United States.
Yes.
And DHS has, in writing, said, we know that's happening. We know they're coming here. We're processing them in and have no idea where they are.
Correct.
You're telling me.
And again, that was Victor Avila, formerly of DHS, and producer Susan. Can you include this clip in the show notes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, one of the things I think we need to end when Trump takes into office, I think we need to end this program where we just take in unlimited number of people from Venezuela, Haiti, and Cuba, because that's who we're bringing in, prisoners basically. I'm not saying every Venezuelan immigrant is a prisoner, but a great many are. So all right. All right, you want to move on to something less controversial and more educational? All right. And again, I give producer Susan for this. I wasn't aware of this, but they are now training dogs to detect electronic devices and components. Now, if you're familiar with SD data cards, storage cards that are used in cameras and phones, they're about as big as your fingernail. And they're using, and even some computers can take little SD storage cards. Now, if you're a bad guy like a pedophile and you want to hide an SD card with a bunch of child porn on it or any other incriminating evidence somewhere in your house, and the police showed up with a search warrant to look for it, they might never find it. I mean, if I said, hide a fingernail somewhere in your house, do you think you could find it where the cops might, do you think you could hide it where the cops might never find it?
Yeah. There's literally a million places that you could hide that a human wouldn't be able to find.
Right. I mean, they're so tiny, you could put it in the pages of a book. I mean, if you had 100 books in your house, you could put it in the pages of a book. I mean, that's how tiny and thin they are. So I didn't realize this till you told me about it. And there's actually a demonstration video, but they have now trained dogs that can smell and react to devices like SD cards and other electronic devices. And these dogs are called electronic storage detection, ESD, electronic storage detection canines. And they are trained to detect, and this is what I found interesting. Do you know what they're trained to detect?
They're trained to detect two different chemicals that are used for anti-static properties and overheating properties. I can't pronounce the words, but the first one is TPPO, and the other one is HPK.
Right.
And I can't pronounce either word.
The TPPO is triphenyl phosphine oxide.
I think the other one is hydrocyclohexylphenyl ketone.
Right. So they train them to detect these two these two chemicals that are used to produce the cards because the chemicals linger on those SD cards. So,
Mhm.
and we have a demonstration video. So if producer Susan, if you can include
Yeah,
the demonstration
absolutely.
video to see these again, think about something as small as your fingernail and
Mhm.
not much thicker, and you can hide it anywhere in the house, and these dogs can find it. It's just stunning. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah,
The other,
I have firsthand experience with this training. I didn't train the dog to do this, but training the dog initially, and ultimate training with the CIA down in Langley to train this dog. Her first month on the job, she found 75 SD or micro cards or SIM cards, resulting in 10 felony arrests for child pornography and human trafficking.
fantastic. I mean, just and I
And that's
didn't
her first month. She's been
in
on the
1 month,
job. It's
right?
actually been about a year. She graduated last December. So she's earned her kibble and a few belly scratches.
Any idea how many dogs are like that have been trained and put out?
To my knowledge, through the CIA that we work with, there's only a handful of dogs.
Okay, but man, I just think that's so incredible they can train a dog. I knew they could detect cancer and COVID. I didn't no idea they could detect
I mean, I think what most people think of when they think of these canine police working dogs, these law enforcement dogs, is they're it's a search and rescue for humans, but bomb dogs, um, and drug dogs. But yeah, electronics detection. And what makes her special, if you ever watch the behavior of these dogs when they're sniffing, she's very methodical in her natural. So anytime we're looking at these dogs for training purposes, we're looking at the dog's natural ability and what makes the dog happy and its natural behaviors. And then we're building on that. And she was very methodical, going back and forth in a very systematic pattern, whereas bomb dogs and drug dogs are not quite as systematic
Mhm.
in their sniffing, and that's why she can detect these micro SD cards and these SIM cards in a very large room, and she can do it in minutes.
Well, just incredible. Anyway, I've got the video. It's
Mhm.
a rather I think it's about a 15-minute video. It's from a TV
Yeah,
show.
and I watched it, and towards the end, the person hides a USB drive, which is about the size of your finger, finger, not fingernail. And they hide it in the track of a door, and I mean, the dog finds it in 30 seconds.
Yep. So it's just incredible. So I
But
urge.
like you said, those micro SD cards and those SIM cards, I mean, they're literally the size of your fingernail.
Yeah, I looked around my house and said, if I wanted to hide one of these, where could I hide it? You could take, for instance, a picture frame and put it between the bed.
Yeah.
I mean, just think of all the places you could hide an SD card.
Or
You could
crack in your baseboard.
crack in your baseboard, or it's just so many places to do it. Anyway, we could probably spend the whole rest of this half hour talking about it, but it's just incredible to watch the video. All right, big news this weekend was President Biden pardoned his son Hunter. And not only didn't he pardon him for the two crimes that by the way, he was convicted of one and he pled guilty to the other, and he was supposed to be sentenced in the next 2 weeks. So a lot of people don't know this, but he didn't just pardon him for those two crimes that he's one been found guilty of and two he pled guilty to, but he made the pardon retroactive to January 1st of 2014. Why do you think he made the pardon retroactive to any and all crimes that he may or may not have committed up to 10 years ago?
Yeah, I have so many issues with this.
All right. By the way, but let me tell you, and so many pundits have egg in their faces. Let me play this. This is just a collection of both President Biden and his press secretary, Kareem Jean-Pierre, saying over and over and over that no, he's not going to do this. And here we go. Kareem Jean-Pierre, for starters.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well, is there?
I just said no. I just answered. Go ahead.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes,
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
yes. I'm extremely proud of my son Hunter. I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that. And I will not pardon.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
All right. So why the change of heart? Well, here's my take on it. I believe that when he agreed to step aside and endorse Kamala Harris, and by the way, there was no primary. He simply, the day he announced he was dropping out of the race, on that same speech, he announced that he was endorsing Kamala Harris. And at that point, it was virtually impossible for the rest of the Democrat Party to try and promote anybody else as their candidate. But I think part of the deal was, hey, I'm going to do this for you, and in exchange, when you get, after you're sworn in, you're going to nominate Hunter. Deal? And I think that was the deal. And of course, when she lost the election, that deal went by the wayside. So I think that's what happened there. But the question is, why did he make the pardon go all the way back to January 1 of 2014? I've got my own ideas. Do you have any thoughts?
No, I have other thoughts, though.
Well, my thought is this. He started working for Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company. He went on their board of directors, and they were paying him $50,000 a month. Now, he knew nothing about the oil and gas business. He had never served on a board of directors. Doesn't have an MBA. So why would you hire somebody? And by the way, when you're on the board of directors, you attend maybe you participate in one directors meeting a month, maybe. Sometimes it's one per quarter.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any director who gets paid $50,000 a month, particularly when you've got no experience in the industry that you're on the board of. So, clearly that was a payoff. And I think what was happening, does the name Paul Manafort ring a bell?
Vaguely.
He was an advisor to Trump that got sent to prison because he got convicted of acting as an unregistered foreign agent. Now, you can represent a foreign government, you can lobby on behalf of a foreign government, but you have to register with the State Department as an agent of a foreign company. So if you want to do work for Toyota or Samsung or any foreign company and lobby legislatures in this country, you can do that, but you have to register as a foreign agent. Well, Manafort, I think it was for Russia, was lobbying legislators and congressmen and senators on behalf of the Russian government and didn't register an agent. He got convicted and sent to jail. Well, you have to believe that Hunter Biden was lobbying not only on behalf of Burisma, but also he was lobbying on behalf of China. So I think now he was never charged or indicted for doing that, but I have to believe that if you wouldn't have to dig very deep to come up with evidence that he was in fact acting as an unregistered foreign agent. So I think that's why Joe Biden has made the pardon retroactive to January 1st of 2014. Now, you said you had some thoughts. What?
Yeah, so I don't think that the president should have the power to pardon immediate family members. I think that is taken out of the spirit of what that power is meant for. But in Joe Biden's quote, he says, no reasonable person who would look at the facts of his case, Hunter's case, and can reach any other conclusion that Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. But in his next sentence, he says,
go ahead.
Tell the American people, American people are fair-minded. I believe in the American justice system. But if you believe that your child is innocent and you believe in the justice system, then why would you feel the need to have to pardon them?
You would. And by the way,
I think that no reasonable person, having heard what they are accusing him of, I think, again, look at the facts of the case.
Well,
I think any reasonable person would find him guilty.
Well, let's look at the claim that he was, quote, singled out. Who is prosecuting the case?
I don't know the attorney who was.
No. What agency was prosecuting the case?
The government.
U.S. Department of Justice.
Yeah.
And who heads up who is the current head of the DOJ?
Biden.
No. Well, Merrick Garland.
The head of the DOJ, I don't know, but they report to Biden ultimately.
Yeah, Merrick Garland, who was appointed by Biden. Merrick Garland is a diehard liberal Democrat. So why on earth would the Department of Justice, headed up by Biden's hand-picked director, be singling out his own son? I mean, it's laughable to say that his own Department of Justice, headed up by his own hand-picked director, Merrick Garland, for some reason was singling out his son. Now, you could say, hey, if the
He
director of
was
the
singled out because of the facts of the case.
yeah, he was a crook. He admitted, but he pled guilty that he didn't pay. Now, yes, people say, well, he paid. Well, he paid the taxes, the back tax and penalty. Yeah. If that was the only penalty for fraudulent tax returns, everybody would try it, because if the only penalty was, okay, you caught me, here's the money.
Yeah.
They've been sending people to jail for years. You probably don't remember the name Leona Helmsley. She was in New
Oh,
York
I
City.
do. She was the shoe lady, wasn't she?
No. Well, she was New York City, and she was a hotel, and they sent her to jail for 10 years.
Yeah, I do remember her.
Yeah, Leona Helmsley. Anyway,
Or I'm
so
thinking of Imelda Marcos. That's who I
yeah,
was
you're
thinking
thinking Marcos. No, but to say that he was singled out, why would his own Department of Justice, headed up by Merrick Garland, single
Yeah.
out Biden's son? It's completely
I mean,
bogus.
that's two lies in his own statement about any
Yeah.
reasonable person,
No,
which I totally disagree with, because any reasonable person would look at the facts and find him guilty. And then saying that you believe in the American justice system, but yet you feel the need to have to pardon him.
right. And then he pled
Clearly
guilty.
you don't believe in the justice system.
And then he pled guilty to lying on his firearm
Or maybe
background
that's
check.
the part. Maybe that's the point. He does believe in the American justice system, knowing the American justice system would find him guilty.
Yeah. All right. Wait. So anyway, I'm just shaking my head at this, and it's a huge. Oh, and going one further, and I didn't have time to collect them, but back in June of this year, when he made that statement, we played him repeating that 3 or 4 times. Everybody, Whoopi Goldberg on The View, Joy Behar, Jim Acosta on MS, they all said they all ranted and raved, and oh, this is an example of people putting principle ahead of personal. This is showing respect for the rule of law. They all praised Biden for putting the principles ahead of well, don't they all have egg on their faces now?
Yeah, again, I don't believe that the president should have this power to pardon immediate family members, because I don't think that's what the spirit of this power was meant for.
Unfortunately, it's in the Constitution, and to change it, you'd have to amend the Constitution, which
Not
is
to change it, but I think when there's sometimes laws are made, people forget the spirit in which that
right.
law was
and I agree.
for.
And in the spirit of law, I don't think any president should pardon an immediate family member, because I think that goes against
that's called a conflict of interest in any other court. If any other person, if any judge did that, they'd have to recuse themselves, because it's a conflict of interest.
Exactly. All right. Let's move on to our new word of the day, which is Schadenfreude, a German word. Again, you see these little 30-second things on Facebook, right, where people fall down a flight of stairs, they fall into a fountain. We've seen these things all the time, right? They trip and fall, or right, that, and you laugh, and that's Schadenfreude, where you take it describes a feeling of pleasure or satisfaction that comes from witnessing another person's misfortune. Well, here is a classic example of Schadenfreude in action. Do you know that as Vice President of the United States, you're also President of the Senate? And as President of the Senate, and in that role, one of Kamala Harris's last official acts that she will be responsible for certifying the results of the 2024 election, confirming Donald Trump as the winner of the election. How's that for Schadenfreude? Kamala Harris presiding over the Senate and confirming Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. Is that Schadenfreude or what?
Yeah.
All right. How much time we got left?
We only have about 5 or 6 minutes left.
All right. Taxpayer relief shot. Why do we call them taxpayer relief shots? Let me let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain that one to you. If I can find it here.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
All right. So in this next clip, this comes to us from California. This is grandfather, and apparently he's got a bedroom, and he's got a store in California, and he was having trouble with people breaking in. So he's actually got a kitchen in the back of his store, and it's legal. And anyway, he had his 2 grandsons. I think they were like 8 and 14, staying with him. And in the middle of the night, after they'd gone to bed, his 14-year-old grandson says, Grandpa, I just heard glass break. Somebody's trying to break into the house. Well, here's what happens next after his grandson wakes up granddad.
Okay. boom, kick the door. Boom, it was that quick.
That was the moment 70-year-old Robert says he was forced to defend his life and the lives of his grandsons, ages 4 and 14.
We'd been dead, because if he would have gotten my gun when I pulled it out, because he continued to go towards me. He wasn't afraid of me.
Robert says he stays in the building, which he manages, and was asleep in the back room with the boys when the older grandchild woke him up.
Shook me. Papa, wake up. There's somebody breaking in. And I didn't hear the glass break.
Broken glass is still all over the floor, and Robert placed a large poster in the window frame. A man passing by gave us video of the crime scene when Rancho Cordova police closed off the parking lot Sunday morning. He understands why Robert pulled the trigger.
You have to protect yourself. You have to do it. If it's I have the kids and stuff like that, I have to protect them. I will definitely do that. It's your life, that's your blood, and you definitely have to do stuff like that.
Sheriff's deputies are investigating the deadly shooting as a homicide, but also say it should send a strong message to criminals.
Residents are fed up. Residents don't want to be a victim. Business
By the way, this gentleman speaking, he's with the Sheriff's Department.
owners don't want to be victims anymore, and they're taking their matters into their own hands. And this isn't something that we're encouraging vigilantism by any stretch, but at the same time, you have to applaud him. He demonstrated restraint. He did what he had to do to protect the people inside and including himself.
Robert says if faced with the same decision, he would put his life on the line for his family again.
Am I upset about him? Yes. I didn't want to break in, but I'm very happy that my babies are alive.
All right. So what do you think about that one?
It always seems to be justified.
Always seems to be justified. All right. By the way, it happens every day. I mean,
Yep.
we only play one a week. I could play 10 a week. By the way, there's probably one fatal one every day, and for every fatal one, there's 3 or 4 where the bad guys get shot or wounded. So every day in this country, about 5 bad guys get shot, and out of those 5, about 1 a day gets killed. So that's why there's never a shortage of
And not that we're advocating killing them, but we're advocating defending yourself.
Right. And people, if you are not a member, when seconds count, the police are minutes away, and
Yeah.
if you are not, you are your own first defender. You are the person who is primarily responsible for your own safety. And if you're not prepared, if you want to delegate that to somebody who can be there in, 8 to 15 minutes, well, that's you. It's not me. Anyway, I know we're running out of time, so I just want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on things I find of interest and important, and I hope you found them as interesting, as important as I did. Producer Susan will try to get some of these links up on the website. If you want to see some of those materials and the story links you heard me talk about today, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to just joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and a double E. And with that, Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Oh, I did that right before the show started. I was watching the evening news, and those big inflatable Santas that people put in their yards?
Yep.
In some cities, I think this was in specifically in Lexington, Kentucky, and not just there, but other places, people are using them as target practice. I mean, not funny, but not funny. These are populated neighborhoods, and those things are just made of fabric, and you shoot through them, it's going to go through some little kid's bedroom window.
Well, unless it's a pellet gun or a BB gun, but
yeah, but I think the people that are shooting at them are not using BB
pellet guns. All right, Producer Susan, thank you for your time tonight, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.